Welcome to Off-Grid Path. This is a 12-part series on how we converted a rundown static caravan into our dream cabin here in the UK. I want to deep dive into how we went from this dilapidated static caravan into our cosy cabin home with no experience whatsoever. For those of you who are wanting to do something similar, I'll be taking you through all of the things that worked really well and also the countless mistakes and things that definitely didn't work throughout the whole process. If you want to check out this series and more videos like this, then just head over to my YouTube channel Off-Grid Path and subscribe for more updates. Welcome to part 10, and in this episode we're going to be looking at finishing a bit of the internal cladding, building the axe wall, making a bucket shower for our shower system, which is only going to be temporary, and also looking at cladding the outside of the cabin as well, which was a really exciting part for us. So as we start this episode, I already sort of hung some axes up on the wall, and I wanted to clad that section of wall, so I took that down. The cladding, the internal cladding is very simple. I mean, like I was saying before in previous episodes, it's not essential at all. OSB would have been absolutely fine, but it was really purely 100% aesthetic. We're adding a huge amount of weight by using this 6x1 because it's what we had, and it's not obviously the ideal material to be cladding with, but we had that available to us, and really didn't mind the look of it either. Quite liked the look of it. The vertical kind of cladding rather than horizontal cladding, I think, helps from a psychological point of view because it makes everything seem a bit taller, and for me, I'm 6'5", so it does help my kind of feeling being in the cabin. So yeah, finishing off the cladding really helped. It's kind of little things like framing in windows and things like that, really small touches, but make such a huge difference to the feel of the cabin, really making it feel kind of finished, which is nice. So one of the things was the axe wall, which is an ever expanding project the more tools I get, but I really like axes and sort of old tools like that, and the corridor just always seemed like a nice place to put them. Some people think it's a bit odd, and I totally get that point of view, but I just like having them there and like having them to hand and seeing them. So we did not have a shower at this point. The shower was not working, and needed to make a shower basically, essentially, until we had everything hooked up to electric and water and everything like that. So came up with the idea of making a bucket shower, and I've seen a few of these, and there's lots of different sort of methods of bucket shower, but not a huge amount of kind of instructional things about how to make a bucket shower. So I really had to figure this out by myself, and went into plumbing stores and things like that, asking their advice on how to do things. And they kind of looked at me in a weird way, but in the end essentially got a 10-litre bucket, used a tank connector, which is what the piece is called. So I drilled a hole in the bucket and then put a tank connector in that, which kind of creates a seal, and then from that a few little connections, and then just a tap, a valve tap, which you can get various different types, some with levers, some with a little sort of turning handle, which you can see here, the red handle. And then on top of that, I've just had a small bit of copper pipe, which I then put I think you call it a rosette, on the end of a watering can, which I just got from a gardening centre. Literally just kind of put that on top and then use one of these kind of clip fasteners just to hold that in place. It was actually a really good fit over the top. I didn't think it was going to be as good as it was, so probably could have held by itself, but I just put the fastener over the top just to make sure it stayed there in place. So then you've got this bucket, you've got the way for it to release water, and then it's a simple case of slinging it up on a tree. So we didn't have any hot water at the time, so what we would do, it's a 10-litre bucket, and we would boil. We got a 3-litre kind of kettle on top of the log burner, so we'd get that up to temperature, kind of boiling temperature, and added. It kind of worked out lucky. I mean, I just kind of did it in my head where I was like, right, okay, 10-litre bucket, we've got a 3-litre thing of water. If you had 3 litres of boiling water and then 7 litres of cold water, is that going to be warm enough or too hot or too cold? It actually worked out perfectly. So just by pure luck, it was just trial and error, and that happened to work. So if you're ever thinking how much hot water you need, basically 3 litres of boiling water and 7 litres of cold water kind of gives you that perfect shower temperature. So a 10-litre bucket, if that was at full flow, it would take a minute to completely drain it. So you've got a full flow minute shower there. And a lot of you are saying, well, a minute's not enough. But actually, it is. So we had it on like half flow, slung it up in a tree, half flow for just to get you wet, and then you turn it off, and then you kind of soap up, and then again. And I could do that twice. I could soap, do that process twice. So half flow, get wet, turn it off, soap up, then another half flow again, just wash it all off, clean. And I could do that again, have another soap sort of session, and then you just drain out the rest of the water until it stops. And that's a 10 litre, that's 10 litres of water. So it really puts it into perspective how much water you use in a shower at home, because basically every minute for a shower at home, you're using 10 litres pretty much. So it's quite interesting. Anyway, for a period of time, that was fantastic. We'd shower outside. It was just a really nice... Yeah, it was cold. It was in the winter at this point. We'd moved in by now. It's after Christmas. So January, February, we'd showering outside, and it was quite cold. But nice. It's invigorating, and it's more of a novelty. It's probably not something you want to do forever. But for a couple of months, it was quite nice. It was a nice novel thing to do. So it was quite a nice moment in time, really, having the bucket shower, and probably one of the proudest achievements of the whole cabin build, because it used a lot of my mental thinking to try and work out how it works. So I was actually really proud of it. I thought it was great, and I still got it. I haven't used it in a while, but it's there. For a sort of novelty shower, I guess. So that worked really well. Now it was time to start cladding the outside of the cabin, and if you remember in previous episodes, we actually put most of the sort of horizontal batten up while we didn't have any internal walls, just so I knew what I was screwing that internal batten into, and can't just screw in just to the aluminium shell. It needed something solid to screw into. So really glad that I had that thought at the time. While we didn't have anything up, it was just stud work inside, that we could screw the batten into something solid. So because all of a sudden we're now about to add X amount of 6x1 timber onto that batten, which is going to add a huge amount of weight. And if that batten's not screwed into something solid, it's going to be it's just going to be compromised, really, and especially if you get wind and things like that. We did put vents on the kind of soffit part, because we wanted as much airflow coming in as possible, so we didn't want to block that off. But like you've seen before, I really stuffed that insulation in, so it probably doesn't do anything, to be honest. But we did put a bit of a mesh on there to try and stop any bugs, flies getting in. I'm sure they could get in other little cracks and things like that, but just thought we'd do it just as a little bit of a preventative kind of thing. So we're just kind of putting the soffit fascia on. It was a little bit, some of the days I was working by myself, so I just have to do a little jig to try and help me out, just to get it up there. But it all works. This terrible crap ladder is coming into its own and actually helping. Probably not the safest. You can see the bottom rung there is already broken. But yeah, so now it's just very much a case of, again, anyone that's done any cladding, it's just a bit of a laborious thing to do. It's quite repetitive. Lots of repetitive cuts, but it does go up quite quickly, which is nice, and it's a very satisfying thing to do, because the aesthetic of it is it's great. So one thing I would say with the cladding, if you're ever thinking about doing 6x1 cladding, which is what I was doing, just quickly on a sideline, some people have said, does the cladding really protect? The cladding here is really, again, aesthetic. We didn't need to clad the cabin. The cabin has, I call it the cabin, but the static caravan, I've got to remember it's static caravan, has this aluminium shell, which has got kind of, I wouldn't call it pebble dash, but it's kind of sprayed on rough grit. It kind of looks a bit like pebble dash, which is its outer shell, and that's what it's designed to be. So technically we didn't need to clad it. It's already got its outer shell. So all of the cladding we're doing is very much aesthetic. It would preserve the life a bit of it, because you're putting another outer wall on. So it's, you know, you're not doing anything bad, but you are adding a lot of weight to it. But it didn't need to be done. So it's just, this is all purely aesthetic. One of the annoying mistakes I made, because what people do on 6x1 is used for barns, you know, like agricultural barns. And what they do is they put a bit of an air gap in, a little gap in between the cladding, because in barns it doesn't need to be necessarily watertight, but they want the airflow coming through, so they put a bit of a gap in between. And that's what I did. I didn't have an experience with cladding or anything like that, and that's what I did. I just thought that's what you do. And someone said to me, it's just in case the wood swells, if it gets wet and it swells. That's part of the reason why I did it, and it's really annoying. And I wish I didn't do it, because I wish I left about a 5mm gap in between every single bit of 6x1, every single vertical. And what's happened, not to the same degree as in the cabin, but they've shrunk, so that gap has got wider. You know, they shrunk about 5mm either side, 10mm in total. So that gap gets a bit wider. So what I really wish I did was just jam them together, you know, really pat them tightly, because they will shrink. And this whole kind of swelling, you know, the wood swelling if it gets wet, it doesn't, you know, not to that degree. Some people may argue that, but what I wish I just put them together tightly. It's just a small thing, but you know, one of those lessons that you learn. So that is the end of part 10. Join us for part 11, where we'll actually be digging and installing the soakaway, which is partly for part of the toilet, and also for the shower, the sink, the washing machine. Crucial step for us, because that means the shower can start working, and we can start showering and properly, you know, living comfortably inside with a washing machine, shower, toilet for urine, sinks and everything like that. We're going to soakaway. So it's quite a rudimentary soakaway, but it might be quite interesting for you to see that process. And then at the end, we've just got a few finishing touches on the cabin. So like always, if you do have any questions, just leave them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to get back to you. If you have found value in this film and enjoyed it, please consider giving it a like and a share. It would be greatly appreciated, and it helps massively. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in part 11. Cheers.